If we are not able to sleep because the tongue is dropping back in the airway and it's causing an obstruction, or the soft tissues in the back of the throat are collapsing, the body goes, oh, we got to wake up because we can't breathe.
Right.
And it might send a signal that tells the kidneys, and there are all kinds of ways that the body wakes us up. So it's like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, or I woke up and my heart is racing and I don't know why. It can be different signals that wake us up, or they might not fully wake you up, but they get you out of that deeper stage of sleep where the tissues aren't as contracted. And so it goes, no, when we're that relaxed, our airway collapses. I don't want you to be that deeply rested. Wake up, get into a shallower stage of sleep. So think of a kid that has been having interrupted sleep all night, whether they fully woke up or not.
Right.
If they didn't ever get into that really restorative deep stage of sleep, their body is like, well, we're exhausted. And now they're supposed to go sit in a chair for 8 hours.
Right.
And they're just trying to stay awake because their body it's really wanting to sleep, but it also knows when we go to sleep, it's not actually doing much. Granted, guys, we need all the sleep we can get. Like that is good sleep as far as making sure they're laying down. But if your body just isn't restoring itself, they're going to have to keep themselves alert in some way, and movement is a way to do that. Yeah. If you're engaging and moving your body, it typically wakes you up.
Welcome back to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. You may remember back in 2025, I did an episode with Dr. Ellie Phillips all about dental health and mouth health. And one of the things that we really talked about is how a lot of holistic dentistry can get a little too far ahead of itself and do unnecessary interventions. So today, having been down these rabbit holes myself with experts such as Dr. Stephen Lin and really looking at the holistic dentistry industry as a whole, I wanted to bring someone on to talk about the mouth, our mouth health, our jaw health, the strength of our teeth, and how that impacts our airway for children and for adults. So I had originally brought Karindy here, who is a speech and language pathologist as well as a myofunctional therapist, to talk about kids, to talk about my son, because we're kind of going down this pathway a little bit with him, which we talk about in the show. But we also talked about adults and what ends up happening to the jaw as we get older and how we can improve this so that we have better airway health, which is going to really be better health in general. Because if you're not getting oxygen to the cells of your body, you're aging quicker. This is crucial in the population of our children, but it's also crucial at any age, because if you're not sleeping, if you're not getting oxygen to your cells, you're aging faster and you're at risk for a whole bunch of health conditions. So whether you're a grandparent or a parent who wants to look after the health of their child, or you're just a person who wants to understand how they can optimize their own airway health from this lens without going to invasive therapies necessarily or interventions, then this episode is for you. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. So make sure you head down to the show notes and check out all of Karindy's links. And as I've been mentioning in these new episodes of 2026, head down to the show notes for some of my resources. You'll get early access to my podcast episodes, as well as my free seasonal food course, which is typically a paid product, my UVB and red light therapy product as well. That's going to be on my brand new Substack. You can get those for free when you join for free. And I have a webinar all about light and health that I would love for you to check out completely free as well. And that will also be down in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will talk with you again soon. Welcome to the Evolving Wellness Podcast, where circadian biology and quantum biology meet nutrition, lifestyle, hormones, health, and everyday conversations. I'm your host, Sarah, board certified in applied quantum biology by the American Naturopathic Medical Board and certified in nutrition by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. This is just a quick little reminder that you'll never hear a guest on this podcast whose every stance I agree with. And that's the point. These are conversations and not consultations. The information shared here is for information and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of a qualified, trusted professional for all of your personal health needs. If you want more of my content, including my free long-form articles with citations, free ebooks, membership group with more access to me and my circadian app that helps you integrate light into your life seamlessly, make sure to visit www.sarahkleinerwellness.com. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to talk about myofunctional therapy, airway health, children, and just kind of more of a deep dive on this topic because I think it's becoming more and more popular. People are interested. And welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. And I love your work, what you do in regards to circadian rhythm and just getting people their nervous system sets. It's already so much in line with what we want to be doing from an airway perspective. So I'm very excited about this discussion.
Yay. Well, where do we want to start? Maybe we could talk a little bit about you and what you do and
absolutely.
All those things.
My name is Karindy Ong. I'm a speech-language pathologist and a myofunctional therapist. So most people have probably heard of a speech therapist. You know, maybe they have someone who needed to get some speech therapy as a child or maybe swallowing therapy as an adult. You might have an awareness of that, but myofunctional therapy is a little bit less known. And what that is retraining basically the structures of the face, of the mouth, of the airway, which in this discussion, we're going to be talking about like the muscles of the neck, of the mouth, and even just some of those upper respiratory muscles as well when we do breath training. So that is what myofunctional therapy really is about. And it was something I didn't know about I was working in the hospitals and I knew about swallowing therapy, working with all kinds of patients with brain injuries and spinal cord injuries. But this was really a therapeutic focus for me because in the hospitals, we kind of divide. We've got doctors and then dentists. You don't see them in the hospital. And that's mostly from insurance reasons and other things. But we kind of were like, okay, you might see some bony growths in the mouth. What does that mean? We were sort of taught to just go like, as long as it's not affecting things, we just note it and move on. But then really it was when my own children started having their own airway issues and I was learning about really the connections between ear infections and the movement of the tongue. That's when I was like, I need to specialize in this because I need to understand it more. Then I saw the broader applications to my patients. And as with most of us that have some kind of holistic health journey, it's our own personal experience. And then it kind of takes over. Yeah. And you're like, I really have to help people with this because there's just a paucity of really providers that have an understanding of the airway and how it's affecting our function and developmental growth. So that's now what I do. I help families with understanding chewing, breathing, sleep, nervous system regulation, brain function, and how it all relates to really the organ of the mouth. It's a circadian organ. It primes us for the rhythms that we should have in the body. And it does that in utero. And when we kind of go off the rails already in utero, it sets us up for having to adapt in a way that makes us alive. Like our body is smart, it will adapt, but sometimes that means we might have a maladaptation. And further on down the chain, we might have these smaller mouths, more narrow airways, and that causes stress on the body.
Yeah. And I don't think, when I was growing up, this was not a thing at all. No. It was, let's pull your teeth out and put braces. Like I know I need myo. Like I'm 100% sure of it. It's just like my kids are always the priority. Which
I love. And you know what? It's beautiful that you're doing that for your children. I'm just going to give you a shout out. Like you're changing their future. So well done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I have to specify it's for my son. I wish we had known about this with my daughter because I wonder if we could have avoided a lot of the ear tube surgeries and the adenoids coming out and the sleep issues and a lot of that, I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, if I had known about this stuff. Because again, that's like another generation where we just did surgeries,
Yeah.
and we didn't really investigate further. But for my son, I had Stephen Lynn on my podcast about a year and a half ago, and he was the one who kind of got me down the airway pathway and looking at a lot of this stuff and getting everybody here to an airway dentist and doing all of that. And then
Yeah.
thankfully, the airway dentist that we work with, she's like, you have to do myo. It's not just me, I'm not the only player here. It's
Yeah.
myofunctional has to be involved. And so, just a long story short, I think it's a thing that people are starting to wake up and see it's important. And yeah, it kind of can give clues as like if your kid's not sleeping well,
Mm-hmm.
if they're having behavior issues, getting sick a lot,
Mm-hmm.
respiratory infections, ear infections, that this might be a pathway that a parent would want to look down, right?
Absolutely. And, people might be listening now and their ears kind of perk up. They're like, oh, that sounds like one child, or my child has those issues. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
child has these, a compilation of issues. It's usually not just one thing. Like we
Mm-hmm.
have several indicators that tell us, okay, maybe they're not getting that optimal oral rest posture. They're not getting that reset for the nervous system that happens really when the tongue is where it should be. So I love that your dentist is like, it's non-negotiable. We want you to be seeing a
Mm-hmm.
myofunctional therapist. And I want to talk about that really quick, because if someone's listening, myo, which is what we call it for short, is new, but they're also like, wait, who are these dentists that are referring for it?
Mm-hmm.
And really what it is the dentists are working on the teeth, on the arches, that might include like an expander, and they're working on what is happening when the teeth are together and they're getting that contact. Where is that occlusion? Where's the bite? What is happening in the body when we have the teeth together? And really a myofunctional therapist is understanding what's happening when we have the teeth apart. Like, what is the tongue doing?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is having to see a dentist because the teeth are tipping out forward, it might be because the tongue is moving forward when they're swallowing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to be an adaptation. That's something that the body has gone, well, the tongue up in the palate, we weren't able to swallow efficiently. So we're changing the teeth, but at least we're swallowing and breathing. And that is something that it's great when you have a dentist that sees those connections like yours does.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you'll be like, wait, I've been seeing a pediatric dentist. Why haven't they ever told me about it? They might not really see that relationship and understand
Mm-hmm.
the importance of it.
Yeah, it's fairly new, all of this, right? That people are starting to kind of say, wait a minute, maybe pulling out teeth and putting on braces and all these other things is not the solution that we really thought it was, right?
Well, what's kind of a bummer is some of it is new, but it's also ancient.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got Weston A. Price,
Yes.
and he, as he was looking at really indigenous cultures and families that were working and living together, and I think that's a huge part of it. Like, we can't just separate. It's because they were breathing through their noses that they had all these changes. There were societal changes that we don't have. So I think there's a lot to it, but they were eating real foods. They were very direct about making sure that children were breathing through their nose. And this was something he just noted.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, 100 years ago that he saw, okay, we're having these changes. And don't quote me, I could be off on the timing, but I know it was at least 100 years ago that he was really doing this research. And then we kind of got into this space of, well, we went away from looking at how we can functionally change the cranium, the bones of the face, of the head, and the teeth. And instead, we got into really super processed foods, and we know how to make it look good.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do that, because that's if we're wanting the teeth to look straight, we can manage that with some wires and some other things. But we now are seeing what the long-term effects are when we just straighten the teeth and don't take into account how much we might be shrinking the size of a person's airway.
Yeah, exactly. In the airway. That's, and I mouth tape now. I do everything with like nasal hygiene to
Good
keep
for you.
I can't, like, I'm so aware of it now in the nasal breathing and how important it is that I'm hyper aware of like, all right, keep everything clean, neti pot, keep the nasal passages open, mouth tape. But I still like had a lot of teeth pulled out.
Yeah.
I still have very crowded bottom teeth. And I'm like, yeah, once we get my son and my husband, because my husband was having really bad sleep apnea, and the Airway dentistry and Myo have been helping him to
Wonderful.
stop snoring, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Because snoring is a big problem. But I'm like, once
Mm-hmm.
we pay for them and get them figured out, then I'm next. But it's like, I have this jaw that's like the bottom teeth are just like, and I know that going to cosmetic dentistry and just getting more braces is not going to fix the problem of to why the jaw is doing this in the first place. And that's why I love what you do. And I think this is so important for people to kind of connect this thing is like, we have to ask why the body is making these adaptations. Like you said, why are the teeth coming forward? Sure, we can make it look pretty and straighten it out, but like, why is the body doing this in the first place, right?
Yes. And it's absolutely when we have some crowding that tells us that there's tension and a swallowing movement pattern, a chewing pattern that is pulling in a specific direction. So there are actually some things that you can do even now, and we won't go through like specific treatments, but I do want people to listen and know that if they actually start doing some just gentle exercises with their tongue, that they can start to release some of that tension. And you can actually start to see subtle changes in your dentition and through just jaw bone growth, because we want to have that, especially, after 40. I know I want to make sure that I am getting that bone growth, and bone grows through the compressive force. That's where we get that regeneration, that remodeling. Bone gets the signal of compression. That's why we want to be lifting heavy and doing those workouts as we get older. But if you're not chewing and contacting those teeth and hitting those surfaces, you might be growing bone that you don't necessarily want to. That's where we get the tori. That's like, we'll talk about mandibular tori or maxillary tori. What that is, it's a bony growth that you can have in the middle, like the top of your mouth, or usually we'll see 2, sometimes they come up in bumps of almost like 4 on the bottom of the mouth. And that can be kind of painful, and that will increase crowding because basically we've been chewing and we've got these forces that are pushing bone growth, but not through the mandible itself, not through the maxilla where we want it to support the teeth. Instead, it's kind of choosing these areas where it's like, oh, we've got this offset, and now this compressive force is growing bone, but not where we want it. So we want to be laying down, remodeling, strengthening the jaw, because it's very important for cognition. We see, in the hospital, like fall risk significantly increases when people are not chewing, when they're not actually eating their food. And when we have dentures and we're taking out the teeth, you see that again. You see another jump in just cognitive awareness. And it makes sense from a lymphatic standpoint and a glymphatic standpoint that we are generating that detoxification through the dura, through the tissues of the cranium, of the skull. We want to be chewing and getting that support that's actually helping to drain toxins that really we should be increasing that drainage as we sleep. And it's this whole cycle. So I can go more into that, but do you have any questions about?
I mean, I feel like that's like probably a lot of the people that are listening. Like, yes, they probably have kids and grandkids, but they're also thinking like me, okay, crap. I know I'll be 47 next year. And I'm like, okay, got to hit the weights, got to hit the protein, sunlight, all the things that I teach. That's got to, it's even more important. The older I get, the more and more it is important to me to keep building strength and muscle. But I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that jaw and teeth aspect. In fact, I have quite a number of friends that have started really struggling with their dental health at my age. I've been blessed and lucky that I haven't, like, my teeth have been good other than the crowded.
Wait, can we talk about that? because it's not that you've been lucky. It's that you've been very intentional with your choices.
Well, thank you.
You have maximized your ability to actually utilize vitamin D, to utilize calcium. So it's not just going into soft tissues, but it's actually going into the teeth, into really that remodeling of the bone. You know, that speaks to your habits and what you have been doing. So kudos to you. It's not luck, it's intention.
That's true. I should say that. Sometimes I do edit myself around my family members and friends just because, you know, I have a thing where I don't want to make anyone feel bad for having the situations that they do because they haven't made the best choices. So I do end up, when I speak, sometimes editing myself in that way. But I have been very intentional with minerals and hydration and sunlight and sleep and all the things that I do. It's just my biggest thing is like this dang crowding. But as long as I'm not having teeth fall out and cavities and like dental infections and all the things that I see a lot of my friends struggling with, I'm like, all right, well, I'm doing okay. Yeah.
And I do want to ask, and you can edit this out, does the crowding cause discomfort?
No. It doesn't bother me. The discomfort is looking in the mirror and being like, or like when I'm, speaking on podcasts or whatever. And I'm like, oh, there's my bottom teeth again, and I do notice as I've gotten older, it is more pronounced. And so I'm kind of at this place, and I want to do this episode to talk about my son and kids and all of that. But I know I do have a lot of adults listening. So hopefully this is relevant to them. But what I can do going forward to help this, because a lot of the airway dentists are quick to just jump to like breaking your jaw and doing the jaw surgery, which I'm kind of like, seems like a lot. Seems like a lot to do right off the bat, like very invasive. And like, do I want to have my jaw broken and get surgery? Like, and then are we fixing the reason why it did that in the first place? That's my biggest. Are we fixing that?
Right.
So what do you think?
So if ultimately, if your swallow pattern doesn't change, and if the tongue isn't actually able to rest gently in the palate and suction there, then eventually, I'm not saying that things will relapse, but we might see that. I do see that with patients that if they actually didn't address the underlying functional issue, then the structure doesn't have the support that it needs because our body is biodynamic. As we're moving, the mechanism of action is having an impact on the structures. And so if we're not actually changing what the soft tissue is doing, then we will see that impact later on down the line on the harder tissues. And the thing is, like, it is invasive. It is a lot, but sometimes when we look at it, it's like, well, but it might be worth the cost.
Yeah.
And that impact, if someone is not getting lymphatic drainage at night, if they're never able to hit deep stages of sleep because of what is happening with their airway, that is going to have a big impact sooner rather than later. So it is something to weigh. But there are also different ways that it can be handled. We can do less invasive. I in my practice, support everyone with kind of where they're at, whether it is going to be a jaw surgery, whether it's going to be an Invisalign or a different type of, we have like orthotic types of things that you can use in the mouth.
Yeah, my husband has an appliance now that he's been wearing and the snoring has stopped. Oh.
Isn't that amazing?
It is awesome. It's very awesome.
Have his sleep scores changed?
Yeah. He's gotten a lot better with the sleep, and the sleep scores have gotten a lot better. So I'm like, yay. Something
I want to mention that can happen is that sometimes people, as they suddenly start sleeping better, you'll see they get sick. And it's because their body, it's like it suddenly is, it was kind of keeping at bay the detox. And then it's like, oh, we can actually get stuff out. And then it suddenly it just can flood. Like it starts pouring out things that it just wasn't able to get that deep cleaning engaged. And then it can. So it's usually a couple of weeks, depending on what's going on. It might be longer, but note that when you're working with your clients that you might see like, oh, they did this. Why did that happen? And it might be that their body's gone into a deeper level of repair that it hadn't engaged before this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, collagen. And I say this as someone who was extremely skeptical. I've been using it for about 6 months now. I didn't really start it for skin or hair. I started because I was noticing some early joint discomfort last summer, which I suspect was tied to just getting a little bit older and stress levels increasing. Honestly, I've been very surprised. I've actually noticed real improvements in joint comfort, especially with training and day to day movement. Now, from a science standpoint, as we age, collagen in our skin and connective tissue declines. Human studies suggest that hydrolyzed collagen peptides, when used consistently, may support joint comfort and lead to modest improvements in skin hydration and elasticity, with some studies actually showing a reduction in the appearance of fine lines after about 8 to 12 weeks. The blend I've been using also includes eggshell membrane, which has human data supporting joint stiffness and mobility. Just keep in mind, collagen is not a magic wand. It works best alongside enough protein and the basics like sleep and recovery. But if you'd like to try the collagen I've been using, go to www.organifi.com/Sarah K and use the code Sarah K for 20% off your order. Again, that's www.organifi.com/Sarah K. Yeah, I think he's past that, my husband in particular, but that's very interesting to know because I think we think about getting sick as like our body is, we've done something bad, we've mistreated it, our immune system is quote unquote low. But sometimes it can be like, wow, we can finally rest and we're getting real repair. And now let's push this stuff out we don't want to have it anymore. Right.
Right, which is beautiful to be able to do that and to actually support the body through that. And especially when we've got nitric oxide on board because we're nasal breathing, suddenly we've got that vasodilation and things are moving through and we're actually able to just move in a different way and exist in a way that we are continuously detoxing versus it having to be this buildup and then we're bringing on board detoxification methods that I'm so grateful for them, but sometimes it's like we want the body to be doing that on its own regularly, so it's not such a big tax on the nervous system and everything else involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. So adults, there are things that they can do to support bone growth in the jaw and the airway, correct?
Absolutely. Something that I would recommend that every adult should have is a Myomunchie. It's, I mean, I wish we could give them to everybody in schools, like across the board, because we're not chewing real food. We used to chew, I mean, it was like 2 to 4 hours, depending on the research, what you look at, when we were really more hunter-gatherers. And then even if you're looking at, okay, farming, all of that, we still were chewing real foods. But as we have brought in ultra processed foods, and even I see families that aren't doing that. They're eating great foods. They're doing, they've got their kiddos eating amazing food, but it's still soft. We're no longer yanking tree bark off and eating
meat
that
off the bone, and
right.
Yeah.
And it's just a part of it is we don't have time for chewing. We just truly don't. I mean, I do this as my job and I don't have time for it. So bringing in the Myomunchie is such an easy tool. I do like to tell individuals, like, do look at the measurements, because I'm seeing more and more adults that actually don't fit the adult size. And they need the tween size because our mouths are just so small. And it is something you can bring it in. If you have any kind of TMJ pain, like, gently incorporate it. Don't start chewing right away, because you might just find just holding it in your mouth starts to increase tension. So that right there is an indicator, if that happens, to see a myofunctional therapist, and they can really support and help with that.
Yeah, there was a gal I was following. I think she's from Australia. I can't recall her name. But she was big on the expansion and the jaw strengthening, and she was posting about it a lot. And she fell off my radar. I can't remember her name, but she was selling this like chewing thing that you're supposed to chew on. And I bought it, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, I was trying to do it for a minute and it was hurting. I'm like, okay, this is problematic. So do you know what kind of device I'm talking about? It kind of fits over all the teeth. Is that similar to the
So
Myomunchie?
it might be the Myomunchie
Oh,
because Mary Burke is out of Australia, and this one, what
it's a
size
little
is this
different
one?
than the one I got.
Okay. There are a lot. I see
Mhm.
so many people that come in and they've done the Jazzerciser, and not to knock it, but if you do it wrong, you can really hurt yourself. And
Mm.
they'll come in, they'll be like, I did this thing, and it can hurt because if you're not chewing real foods,
Mhm.
and then suddenly, I mean, think
Just
of it as going to the gym.
right.
You
You're
can't
gonna get
just
really
suddenly
sore if you.
deadlift 100 pounds if you haven't been doing any kind of muscle work. Like if you
Mhm.
just have been, oh, well, I'm going to knock it out now because I want to be muscular. That's asking for an injury.
Right.
It's actually the same in the mouth. So we do
Mm.
want to work that up, and we do want to gently incorporate that. And especially as adults, we usually have different adaptations. We've figured
Mhm.
out how to chew on maybe a dominant side. We've
Mhm.
had some people, they've had dental injury, and so
Mhm.
one side just, it doesn't hit the same or it hurts, and so they've chosen, kind of picked a side.
Yeah.
And you'll see that, and then all of a sudden if you put in a something like, even like a Myomunchie, which I love, but
Mhm.
then you're chewing on it for the first time on those surfaces you haven't chewed on in years, that can hurt.
Mm.
So it is important that we're chewing, but it's also important that we're very intentional about how we lead up to that, because I never want someone to get injured with
Right.
this. So let's see, can they bite a whole apple? That is a huge practical thing that most people aren't doing, because let's say they went through braces, they learned they need to slice the apple because it could knock off the brackets. And so then they
Mhm.
kind of got out of the habit, and then it's just, again, like we sort of stopped doing it. I encourage all of the families I see to eat whole apples.
That's good to know. My kids, I have to hide the apples because both of them will go in the apple drawer and just like,
I love it.
oh my God, it drives me insane. But yeah, we don't slice the apples. They both, like, even James is like, just grabs these apples and it just goes for it. I'm like, okay, go
I
ahead.
mean, that's what you want. That's
Okay.
exactly what I want.
All right.
The carrots, the
Well,
celery.
they love, I buy like the big giant carrots, the
Oh, that's
organic ones, and
beautiful.
they'll both like go around the house eating the carrots. Okay, good. I feel better about that.
You're doing amazing.
Okay.
That's what we want. Sugar cane. It's funny. I lived in Bangladesh when I was in high school,
Oh,
and everybody would be walking around chewing on sugar cane, and they had big, beautiful smiles.
wow.
And I was always like, how do they not have cavities? And like,
Yeah, if they're chewing
with
on
all that
sugar
sugar
cane,
cane. But because when you're chewing and chewing, you are increasing that salivary
like,
output. And it's just helping with growing the jaw.
mm,
If you have enough space, really, it makes a big difference as far as your ability to clear debris. If you can move your tongue to those back teeth and clean them out,
mm,
it's not hanging out there as much. And then because they've had enough space, they typically were breathing through their nose. And
yeah.
breathing through your mouth, having that air sit on your teeth, dry them out, that's going to do a lot more damage than chewing on sugar cane and then swallowing, taking a break, letting the enzymes rebuild in your saliva. And really, instead, we worry about the sugar content of this beautiful tool that we can be chewing on and eating. So if anybody has an amazing sugarcane business and wants to sell a lot, please reach out to me, because I'm always looking for it. And
Interesting.
it's hard to find some that isn't kind of moldy, because you'll
Yeah.
find it in the stores and it's not fresh. So we
My
need more of that,
mom
guys.
grew up on a farm and my grandfather grew sugar cane. Now
Oh,
this has
wow.
been, the farm has been gone for, probably 40 years now, but
Right.
that's how she grew up. They grew up in the country and it grew sugar cane. So interesting.
I'm curious, did they chew on it? Like, sometimes it's different if you're farming. It's like you don't touch it because it's the product.
I don't know. I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
I don't know if they did or not. I really don't know, but that's interesting because I think people are so quick to think like you're eating sugar, it's going to automatically lead to cavities. But it's more, and it's kind of like going back to what Dr. Ellie was saying about the need for those digestive, the salivary enzymes to build and giving yourself breaks from eating and breaks from
Mm-hmm.
drinking periodically, especially between like 12 to 2 is what she was saying is the best time to do that, or in the afternoon, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was so interesting how she talked about like night shift and how that affects things,
Yeah.
which I thought I worked night shift for 3 years in my 20s. And it was interesting how my oral health took a huge hit
Wow.
during that time. And I totally didn't, I never made that connection. But when I looked at it, I was like, that was the time, was when I was working the night shift.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And a lot of mothers, their teeth will start struggling. I think it's because of the mineral demands of pregnancy, but then also you're not sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
And I think Nico Kennedy, I need to get her back on my podcast. She really talks about circadian rhythms for moms when they're with young babies and how you can really support yourself in that way. Because I have with James done that because we haven't had good sleep in about 3 years. But we keep it circadian friendly, keep the lights low so that your body can kind of stay somewhat in that rhythm. But I think what happens to a lot of the moms these days is that they're up with their kids, breastfeeding or whatever, and they're looking at their phones or they're turning on lights, and it's like the whole system is getting thrown off. So
absolutely. Man, thinking about that, because when you have that and it's such a highly volatile input of the light on the phone and just what that does to our nervous systems, and just we really need to be able to generate, especially in those late hours, that's when that deep stage kicks in. It's so important that we get that rest. But I want to any mom that's listening, they're like, it's not happening. I mean, I want to encourage you that you are also getting a lot of oxytocin. You're getting a lot of really good, beneficial hormonal releases. So do know that, our body has some mechanisms of protection that it does provide, because there is a season of that, where that does go out.
Yeah. And I'm going to have my friend Molly on the podcast next week, Molly Eastman. I don't know if you know her.
Yes.
We're going to talk about, because she had to counsel me about 6 weeks ago when James was going through a major sleep regression. Yeah. Molly did some phone counseling with me. She was like, look, you're still getting restorative benefits because you're doing it circadian aligned. You're not turning the lights on. You're not going on your phone. There's other hormones that are coming in. And so I don't want you to completely freak out that you're not getting the sleep, because you are getting some of the restorative benefits. If you're laying there in the dark, if you're with him there in the dark, your body is still going to tap into some of those hormones that are repairing. So it's not the same as turning on all the lights and working like a night shift person. It's different. So we always think it has to be some gold standard thing if we're getting sleep disrupted. And I mean, that's just kids. Kids are going to disrupt your sleep. Just part of the deal.
Right. But you sign on for it when you have them. And it's, they are learning how to regulate their own sleep and how to increase that vagal tone, and really how can they downregulate. And that is such a huge part of it, as they're up. That's something I will encourage families, is really working on your own vagal tone when you're up with them.
Yes.
And they feel it.
They do.
Kids, those C fibers, they respond to a lot of input from us. And just if we can focus on really what's going on in our nervous system, which is so hard. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're exhausted. You're tired. But giving yourself a little input. I like to do some vagus nerve input on the side of the neck, but you might, find some reflexology points. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just to kind of get you to tune back into your body. And just that moment, it teaches them actually how to find that regulation, even though they don't even know they're learning it at that moment.
Yeah.
It actually, 2 weeks ago, my older son broke his leg, and we had, I know it's, the day before Thanksgiving it was well.
Oh no.
But I was so proud of my younger son, my 6-year-old. He was crying because he saw it happen, and he's upset, and we're loading up to get in the car to go to the hospital. And he looks at my older son and he goes, "It's all gonna be okay, Axel. Just breathe. Breathe with me,"
Oh,
as he's crying. And it was, it was
oh,
chaotic, I will say, but it was such a beautiful moment of like, oh, wow. They know even better. My husband and I, we were not regulating. We're like, which one do we go to? But my younger son knew in this moment of dysregulation, this is what we pull out. So it really can make a huge difference. And even then, my older son, when they had to put an IV in, he was like, let me breathe, hang on.
oh.
And they learn, and kids adapt and go, no, if I'm feeling dysregulated, I can use this tool
Mm,
that I have practiced in times when I wasn't super dysregulated, and it
mm.
helps.
Yeah.
So know that you're also laying that foundation for them being just able to adapt and be more resilient in times of stress.
If you're not new to my work, you already know the importance of sunlight in your daily life. But what if you have to work in an office all day long? How can you offset some of that blue light? Now, the work of Professor Glenn Jeffrey shows that preconditioning your body with red and infrared light before going into a blue lit environment actually helps your mitochondria buffer the stress of that environment. And I would recommend anyone who works in an office or has to be indoors a lot this winter to have a source of red and infrared on their desk with them. That is why I absolutely love this Bond Charge mini red light panel. And I keep it here on my desk while I'm working in my office and recording videos for you guys. And they've given me a discount for all of my listeners. All you have to do is go to the Bond Charge website, which I'll put down in the show notes for you, and use the code Sarah Kleiner for everything on the site. You can get 15% off. But if you want to get this little Bond Charge red light mini panel, this is really my favorite tool for anybody who has to work in an office and has to offset some of this blue light, because let's be realistic. We can't just quit our jobs and move, even though we might want to. So learning how to live in the modern world and mitigate it is going to be extremely helpful. And the research is there to show that red and infrared light is immensely helpful if you're in a blue lit environment. Head to bondcharge.com and check out the mini red light panel. Use the code Sarah Kleiner, all one word, to save 15% off. There will be a link down in the show notes. Yeah, I think that's so important. And I always try to think like, okay, his nervous system is not fully developed. He just turned 3. So he's kind of borrowing mine. He's looking for cues from me. And so am I perfect? Absolutely not. But it does help to kind of, just say, all right, what's the best I can do in this moment to keep him from going overboard, and especially at 3:00 in the morning, because those are that's when it's tough, when they're up like that, it really is tough. So
and you can edit this out. I'm curious to know more about what did it look like when he was waking up late at night? Like, what were some of his behaviors? What did you see, like a catalyst, or was it very cyclical that it was every night at the same time?
So he went through this major sleep regression right after he turned 3, because before he had turned 3, he was just like amazing sleeper, goes down, stays down, and he would sleep. Sometimes I would have to wake him up. He was like sleeping till 9 in the morning. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Cause I'm putting him down at 7:30 and he's sleeping till 9 a.m. I'm like, this is beautiful. Then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. I have no idea, because I was trying to think, was there some sort of event? Was there some sort of like catalyst, or was it just purely developmental where he didn't want to go to bed, period?
Okay. So it was the going to bed that shifted first?
Yeah, that shifted first, where he wouldn't go to bed, and he didn't want to be, because he was still sleeping in the crib. He didn't want to sleep in the crib. So we had to buy a bed. He just wouldn't fall asleep. And so some nights he wouldn't fall asleep till like midnight. Some nights he was just so tired that he would fall asleep, but he would only stay asleep till like 10 o'clock. And then he would need one of us in there with him. And it was just like a month of trial and error of like, finally we just said, I just bought another bed for his room. So now there's 2 twins and I just pushed them together. And one of us just sleeps in there with him, because I'm like, not going to sleep train. I called his pediatrician. And I was like, what do I do? They were like, well, you're basically going to have to like lock him in his room until he knows that he just has to stay in there. And I was like, what? I'm not doing that. I am not doing that.
Right.
We're like, well, I'm like, he will scream the whole night. Like, I can't do that to him. That's very like not, I mean, and I don't have any judgment on parents who do that. But you got to do what you got to do. But for me, it didn't feel right. So essentially now, like we were able to get over it, but we have to be in there with him. So yeah.
And
now if he wakes up, he will go down usually at like 7:30 with one of us in there laying next to him. And then we get up and leave and we can kind of have our like winding down evening time back, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But typically he'll be up again at like usually around 2 is when he gets up, comes to get us. One of us will go in there for the rest of the night. So that's our pattern right now.
I would love it. I think I'd mentioned an OT that's there who is local to Atlanta. I'll give her a shout out. Nat, the baby OT. She is wonderful.
Okay.
Sometimes what we'll have and there can be so many different things without seeing him. I can't say specifically what, but at 3, we should have this integration of a lot of different primitive reflexes that some of them have been kind of hanging on.
Yeah.
And then we've got a lot of neural pruning that is really kicking in. The brain, it's going, whew, we're going to distill what we need, cut out what we don't. And it's a time of very heavy mental reorganization.
Yeah.
This is often a time when they need a dramatic increase in like deep work, like pushing heavy work, giving, a shovel. He's outside and he is digging the biggest hole he can. He's pushing a weighted ball. He's getting a lot of input through his joints, specifically like proprioceptive input. I'm sure you guys have probably already tried a weighted blanket. That can be very
cool, but I try to put a blanket on him and he gets very upset. He does not like blankets at home. Like he hates it.
And you'll see that a lot, especially in this, they're kind of in this time of neural pruning. And if he knows, he might associate that, oh, when I have that on, I go to sleep. And he's like, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
He's got other options in his mind that he wants to try. So it makes sense, but it doesn't mean he doesn't need that deep input.
Yeah.
So that's where a huge bear hug, wrestling,
I do that. We do squeeze time. Like he'll come and ask me for squeeze time.
Yes.
Yeah, we do that.
So those things are so, so good, but you might find that is he's needing support with integration of just some reflexes that sometimes what can happen is as the body is kind of going through this heavy time of organizing thoughts and organizing inputs, and a primitive reflex that had actually been integrated, it's under a little bit more stress, kind of pops back up. And it's basically the body goes, we're under stress. And primitive reflexes, in case anyone listening hasn't heard of them or doesn't know what they are reflexes that we're born with. And we have specific ones to help us with situations, typically in the first year of life. Yeah. So really, to get out of the vaginal canal, we need to have Moro, we need to have the spinal galant. We need these reflexes that actually help us come into this world. Yeah. And they serve that purpose. And then they're done eventually once the cortex, which is not the brainstem, takes over. So the problem can occur when we actually have primitive reflexes firing. So the brainstem response, it's immediate. It's a reaction that takes over. And this is, maybe you're jumpy and your brainstem, it jumped. And it's because you might have a Moro reflex that hasn't integrated. Yeah. And so the brain is saying, we need to help you. We have this system in place. We're going to help you right now. But your cortex would tell you, actually, it's okay. That was just the door opening. And it would be able to kind of silo what is dangerous, what is not. When we're living through these reflexes, it can have an effect that is ultimately disorganizing. And so it might just be that he needs a little bit of support. He might need a lot of support. I don't know exactly what he has, but it would be an amazing thing to try. And I've never met a 3-year-old that didn't love OT,
Oh, yeah.
occupational therapy. It's so fun, like what they get to do in there.
Blue blockers are a highly debated topic in the alternative wellness world. There are a lot of people that say that they don't work and that they're pointless and useless. And I have to agree with that because there are some brands that are pointless, useless, and don't work. When you test them with a spectrometer, they do not block the spectrums of light that they need to block in order to protect your circadian rhythm. So you've got these glasses that are promising to give you a health benefit that don't. So I will agree with some of those people on that point. But I will disagree in that the research is extremely clear when you look at the spectrum of light that sets the brain up to say, hey, it's daytime. We don't want to have that coming into the eye at night. Viva Rays is the brand I have used and trusted for the last 4 years, actually almost 5 years now, to protect my circadian rhythm because they block the spectrum of light that they actually say they do, the meaningful spectrum of light that signals to the brain that it's daytime. I've tested this personally with a spectrometer, and it's the brand I recommend to clients as well. So if you're looking to upgrade your health this year and get a high quality pair of blue blockers, check out Viva Rays. You can use code YOGI to get extra savings. There's a link down in the show notes. And thank you to Viva Rays for sponsoring today's episode. Yeah, I had actually consulted with functional neurologist about just checking his reflexes because we worked with Melillo for a little bit with my daughter when she was really struggling with a lot of behaviors and things like that. So he's Melillo trained and he's here in Atlanta, but their office never called me back. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
We did a consult and then he didn't call me back. And I just get overwhelmed. I'm like, I can't chase down everyone. So now I'm motivated to look for that again. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And like I said, you can just, if they're outside digging, pushing, those are beautiful ways to really help with regulation. Ideally in the afternoon.
Okay.
That way that it gets the body some time to organize it. Because otherwise you might be like, hang on, we were digging, we were pushing, and now he's like jumping up and down. If it's right before bed, that's where it's a little bit more of, like you said, the cuddle time, that hugging, that deep hugging time is so good to give the brain the input that it needs, that it's safe, because we feel safe when we have more of that proprioceptive input.
That makes a lot of sense. Tons of sense. And for kids, which is originally why I thought it would be good to chat, a lot of kids are struggling with, like I said, ADHD, ADD, hyperactivity, all the above, ear infections, respiratory infections. And yes, we have to look at the food. We have to look at the hydration and phone screen use and sleep and all that stuff. Definitely. But what role does the airway and the things that you teach play in all of this as well?
So a big part of it is going to be actually letting us sleep. If we are not able to sleep because the tongue is dropping back in the airway and it's causing an obstruction, or the soft tissues in the back of the throat are collapsing, the body goes, oh, we got to wake up because we can't breathe.
Right.
And it might send a signal that tells the kidneys, and there are all kinds of ways that the body wakes us up. So it's like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, or I woke up and my heart is racing and I don't know why. It can be different signals that wake us up, or they might not fully wake you up, but they get you out of that deeper stage of sleep where the tissues aren't as contracted. And so it goes, no, when we're that relaxed, our airway collapses. I don't want you to be that deeply rested. Wake up, get into a shallower stage of sleep. So think of a kid that has been having interrupted sleep all night, whether they fully woke up or not. If they didn't ever get into that really restorative deep stage of sleep, their body is like, well, we're exhausted. And now they're supposed to go sit in a chair for 8 hours. And they're just trying to stay awake because their body it's really wanting to sleep, but it also knows when we go to sleep, it's not actually doing much. granted, guys, we need all the sleep we can get. Like that is good sleep as far as making sure they're laying down. But if your body just isn't restoring itself,
right,
they're going to have to keep themselves alert in some way, and movement is a way to do that.
yeah,
If you're engaging and moving your body, it typically wakes you up.
yeah,
So it's, we do need to make sure we're looking at that. It also, if you're not actually getting that nasal breathing, it's very common for us to have these enlarged adenoids
yeah,
and tonsils, because
yeah,
the mouth, it's all that debris, all the stuff in the air, it is getting caught on these lymphatic tissues that are in this upper airway space that's there to protect and catch. But
right,
if it's catching everything,
yeah,
that's where they get inflamed. And that's where they might just be sitting there sending inflammation into the brain. Like they're just sending these little signals that we're inflamed,
Mhm.
and that's a lot for the nervous system. It's
Yeah,
it's very stimulating,
yeah,
and it can be hard because then we're asking a child to pivot their attention to something specific, and their body's like, no, we need it all right here
right,
because we're not breathing great, we don't feel good. And they might not be able to tell us that specifically.
mhm,
So maybe their body goes, well, then let's get sick, or let's get hyperactive,
yeah,
or other things. It's going to manage, but it's not necessarily going to be in a way that we see a healthy, thriving child.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important because, we're still so far away from the mainstream listening to this kind of information. It's just like, let's do drugs for the kids
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's going to just kind of dampen what's going on. But it's kind of the same thing that we were talking about with the jaw. Like, yeah, you do braces or Invisalign or whatever, but if you don't fix the reason why the body did this in the first place, then you're going to deal with it again. And I think with the kids, if we don't address the reasons why they're hyperactive, why they're not sleeping, why they're continuing to have these infections and issues, like it's going to manifest into something else.
And we see even, with, let's say, like nutrition,
Mhm.
if you are breathing through your mouth all the time, you're not actually supporting that enzymatic generation in the mouth, that we need to start that process of digestion in the mouth. And if you're
The gut
not chewing your
issues.
food efficiently and sufficiently, you're getting these, these large pieces that are then traveling down, they're in your stomach, and it's requiring a lot of output on the body to break it down. Is it actually going to break it down efficiently? And this, when we're not getting that nitric oxide
Mhm.
that we get through nasal breathing, it also changes just the chemistry of what is actually happening in that digestive process. And we might not be able to absorb as much. We'll see an increase in iron deficiency and ferritin being low, a lot of anemia in kiddos that have, enlarged tonsils and adenoids, specifically tonsils though. And we'll see this, and you're looking at it and it's like, well, what came first, chicken or the egg? Is it that
Right.
they were mouth breathing, and so they're affecting their biochemistry and how they're able to digest and absorb nutrients? Or is it something else? Is like, how are we
Mhm.
looking at this big picture? And the fact is, sometimes we're not necessarily going to rule out exactly what the issue was. It's like, let's just treat it. Okay. let's get them to be able to absorb more efficiently these nutrients that they're eating. Let's get them to chew more effectively, so they're breaking it down, so they're absorbing what they need to more just efficiently. This is going to also take that load off the body
Mhm.
that is really hitting it when it's trying to break things down and absorb and just live and utilize. So we want to provide that support as much as we can as well.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And that we're so quick to just separate systems out in the body, separate the gut, separate anemia as like, let's just add this to the body, separate even a vitamin D deficiency and just say, well, just give the supplement, and ask like, why? Is it lack of sunlight exposure? Is it, there's so many different things that there's a reason why the body has a deficiency. And yeah, it can be as simple as adding the right nutrition, getting kids to chew more, but a lot of times there's a deeper reason, and there's always an adaptation the body's making to deal with a variety of scenarios, right?
Right. And especially, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing this too. I'm seeing more and more changes in the connective tissue. And so we're getting more of this kind of laxity
Yes.
in the back of the throat. And then you're getting this gut, well, basically, like we can perforate easier through, you know, the microbiome. It's not just staying in the gut anymore. I mean, it's shifting. We're getting things in the bloodstream. We're getting this increased sensitivity to different foods because we're porous. You know, things are moving where they shouldn't. And it really helps to actually set that peristaltic movement, to set tone of the actual system as it's moving through the body when we engage the mouth. So the tongue sets that initial peristaltic movement, even though it's not necessarily peristalsis itself, because peristalsis is like that. Okay, the brain stem has taken over that movement, and that's where you see that motility going down into the gut. But we need to set that initial wave in the mouth. And then sometimes this is where I'll see, because things have been off in the mouth, they might need pelvic floor, because we've actually, like this Valsalva, that we should have chambers of pressure that are exchanging and moving through the body. And because the mouth has been open, we haven't had this regulated pressure exchange up top. We've now shifted that pressure, how it's basically moving through the body at bottom. So you might see the sacrum is tucked under. That is affecting everything else because they're trying to kind of catch this wave of movement any way they can, and it's shifting their posture.
Interesting. It's all connected. It's all connected.
It is.
So just, wrapping towards the end here, for parents who do have kids, what would they want to, where do they even start? You know, because I think that people complain that there's just too much information out there. They're overwhelmed. They're hearing too many things. It's like, what do I do? You know, where is a good place for someone to start to see if the airway, if the jaw, if some of the work that you do needs to be prioritized?
I would say if they have a kiddo who, let's say under 3 or 4, is really hesitant to eat hard foods or is only chewing in the front, like they only want pouches, they only want soft mashable things, this is going to be an indication we really want them to probably see. You can start with an airway centric dentist, and there are lots of directories out there. A good one is going to be the Airway Circle. There are lots of people listed there, and you can find a pediatric dentist. But for the chewing and the eating itself, that would be a feeding therapist. So I love to say start with the airway dentist. They should have a referral for you, and you can get a little bit more of a baseline of what's going on in the mouth. But to actually treat it, that's where we want to be doing the feeding therapy to support them. And then you can also really look at, once we get over that age, we want to see, can they get their tongue to rest in the palate, or are they breathing through their mouth all the time? Are they sick all the time? Those are going to be sure indications we want them to see an airway-centric dentist. I do have a course it's for parents, and it's intentionally not exhaustive. Like, I still want people to see a myofunctional therapist to get an evaluation, but I actually created this course for parents so they could understand more without it being overwhelming. So it has like 4 modules in it, and then I have 10 different exercises, and I'm increasing those as well. And here's the thing, I want everyone to see a feeding therapist if they need that. I want them to see a myofunctional therapist if they need that. But sometimes you just need to kind of try something to even understand, like, where's the hang up? Like, what is not working for us? And that's truly why I created it. But I would love for people, they can check that out. I also have my podcast, the Myohacker podcast, and it has resources for family. And it's really key that people, I would say, don't get shut down if it feels like too much. Like, please reach out. There are so many voices out there, and I get it. It can be overwhelming. And just take a break, take a second, like move away, and then come back, and you can check out my resources on Instagram. I'm Myohacker SLP, and I try to really highlight, okay, who are some providers that you could follow, that you could get information from? Because like we talked about primitive reflexes, I would say finding an amazing OT, or, sometimes a PT, a pelvic floor PT, if that's what they need. Like, how can they find those resources, and getting the help you need is so key. But just don't give up. Don't be like, I'd rather hide my head under the pillow. I get that. It's still like, peek out, learn what you can, and then hide again. I get that. Like, take some integration time. It's okay.
Yeah, you have to be able to digest it and take a moment with it and sit with it. I think that's one thing as a parent, and having a very complex child, my daughter, and going through periods of that, of like, I can't, and that's why I don't share a ton online, because people just kind of come at me with dumb things. I'm like, please stop telling me to do that, because you have no idea of all the other things I've tried. It's frustrating. But I get it. Like, when I say anything about her, the amount of things people throw at me, I'm like, yeah, this is why parents just absolutely shut down when you try to talk about these different topics. But I think this one is important, and with my son, it's like, yeah, he's doing great developmentally. But if this is something that I can help, that can help him have an advantage, feel better, sleep better, develop better, why would I not pursue it? And so that's kind of where we are with him, is like, all right, the sleep thing and what you said made so much sense. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what happened from him being like perfect sleeper to just like, what are we doing here?
And kids, they can do that to you anyways.
They do. Yeah. Yeah. So it's super helpful. And I'll make sure to link everything of yours in the show notes. If someone's just driving, do you have a website or like a central hub that people can go to?
Yes, I would love for them to go to my website, myohackerslp.com. And that's myohackerslp.com.
Amazing. And that's, I'll be checking that as well. My husband's like, can you just ask her what exercises we can start doing with him now?
Yes. So we'll talk about Myomagic at home, because that's what you can do. You can jump to, and actually what's so funny, I found that the families that have done the best with it are the ones that they were like, so we skipped the core modules at the beginning and just went to the exercises. Then we went back up to the core modules. And I'm like, great. I love that. Just get started.
Yeah.
Then you have a framework for understanding, like, oh, now I want to know more about development. Now I want to know more about chewing, the lips, whatever. So,
cool. Well, I'm going to be checking that out, because again, my husband's like let's get the protocol. He did sports and all that stuff. And I kind of just was a nerd and was in my room reading books. But he was doing the drills and the extra, he's all into that stuff. So he really is anxious to kind of get some exercises for my son to do. So I'll be checking those out, and those will be down in the show notes for anybody who's listening or watching and is in a similar situation. And do you have resources for adults too, or is there anyone?
I do. So here's the thing. I would actually say, so Myomagic at home, you can do the exercises for yourself.
No,
I am a little campy, because it's just more fun if we are. So it's kind of funny, but literally those exercises, they work too.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's more of a feeding focus when we're working with little ones, because they want all the snacks. It makes a bigger difference. But for an adult, like, you can, and come on, adults want snacks too, but you can really see like what we want is that jaw stability, tongue movement, all of those things. And I do talk about some precautions, because for adults, we do need to be careful, because if we haven't really moved our tongue and all of a sudden we're doing it, you might have some jaw pain. So I talk about some things like that to be careful of.
Very nice. Awesome. So adults and kids can both do it. And that'll be down in the show notes. And I will definitely be checking that out for myself and my son as well. So stay tuned. And thank you so much for being here today. It's been great conversation.
I've so enjoyed it, and I love your work. I
Oh,
just
thank
think
you.
it's so vital. I'm just asking families, like, please get outside, take the shoes off, go ground, get in the sun, like, connect, and just really, we need to be living as humans again. So let's eat
Yeah.
real food. Let's do it outside.
Yes, please. It's not hard. Well, it can be, but it's not complicated. So
Right.
I'll say that.
Yes.
I'll say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well,
Exactly.
thank you so much for being here today. And again, everyone head to the show notes to check out the resources. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.